Hi guys, my name is Daniel Coffeen and welcome to My Ranger Experience. This video series is about my experience in Ranger School, and I give you all tips and advice on what worked for me when I went through. If you haven't seen the first video in this series, click this link right here so you can get an understanding of what this video series is all about. RAP Week stands for Ranger Assessment Phase Week, where all of your basic soldiering skills are tested, to include the Ranger Physical Fitness Test, the Combat Water Survival Test, day and night land navigation, and a 12-mile foot march. So day one is all in processing stuff. Really not too much strenuous activity happens here. Basically what you do is you show up, you turn in your paperwork, and they basically welcome you to Ranger School. You get a couple briefs. So when I went to Ranger School back in June of 2014, on my first day, I was really nervous that I was gonna get there and just start getting smoked, and it was just gonna be a terrible experience. It wasn't at all. In processing is very easy. There's no smoking, there's nothing like that. The RIs do yell at you a little bit. Besides standing in line all day, there's really not much physical exertion. One tip though I do have for you when you show up to Ranger School is you definitely need to have your hair completely buzzed. There's a few guys that showed up without buzzed haircuts and they were turned away at the doors. So also on this day, you're assigned your company, and there's Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie company. There's some urban legends tied to these specific companies, and I'm gonna go over those right now. So Alpha company is famous for being the most physically hard company to be a part of during RAP Week in Darby, meaning you get smoked more than any other company, but it's also rumored that it's the easiest company to get a go on your patrols in Darby. So something you may want to think about there. Bravo company, which is the company that I was in, also known as Broco. So apparently the urban legend with Bravo company is that you don't get smoked as much during RAP Week, but it's the most difficult to get a go during your patrols, meaning the RIs in Bravo company are very nitpicky on your details when it comes to your patrol methods. And then there's Charlie company, which is also known as Candy company, which I guess is just a mixture between Alpha and Bravo company when it comes to how hard it is to get a go and how bad you get smoked. I was only in Bravo company the whole time that I was in Ranger School. I don't have any experience in Alpha or Charlie company, but just so you know, the RIs switch out in every single, but also just so you know, the RIs switch out at every single phase. So you don't always have the same RIs your entire time through Ranger School. Okay, so once you're assigned your company owns its own CTA, or company training area. So CTA is nothing more than just a big metal awning with a gravel floor, no walls or anything like that, just completely open air. This is where you are going to live for the next 5 days. All of your equipment will be staged there all the time. You get to sleep indoors, but you never get to bring any of your equipment indoors with you. You have to leave it at the CTA. You'll get all your briefings there. You'll do your packing list layout there. You'll get smoked there. You won't be allowed to sleep there. You're gonna try to sleep there because you're gonna be so tired, but that's not a good idea. And we'll get into that in a second. Day 2 is a very early day because this is the day that you take your Ranger Physical Fitness Test. So, first thing that you do is you all get in formation. They demonstrate all of the exercises for you. It's 49 push-ups, 59 sit-ups, 6 pull-ups, and a 5-mile run in under 40 minutes. So this is going to be an area where you are going to see the most significant amount of people get dropped from Ranger School. And for some reason, it's because of push-ups. Push-ups get so many people. I don't understand why. All you have to do is over-exaggerate every single movement. So when you're doing push-ups, go all the way to the ground and lock all the way out. I know that's not what it says in the manual. I know that's not the Army standard. The Army standard is 90 degrees. Just over-exaggerate it. It's not that difficult. It's 49, and then you're done. If you have to do it twice, you're gonna be twice as tired. So if you can do it in one shot, that's what you wanna do. The next event is, in theory, a very easy event, but it never ends up being this way in all the phases, except maybe Florida. But it's the packing list layout. The packing list layout is basically where they take that huge packing list that I went over in the last video, link in the description, and they make sure that you have every single item and that it is serviceable. So when it comes to the packing list, basically what happens is an RI stands up there, he calls out an item, everyone has to hold it up, his assistant RIs come around, they make sure that your item is serviceable, and then if you're good, they make you take a knee. If you don't take a knee, you get smoked. If you have the wrong item, you get smoked. Sometimes if you have the right item and you take a knee, you get smoked. You see where I'm going with this? It's more of a character building exercise, and even more so an attention to detail building exercise than anything else. Yeah, it's important that you have all your equipment, but it's really about attention to detail and making sure that you do every single thing that they say. And that is gonna be a consistent theme, and that is paying very, very close attention to the detail that the RIs give you, and making sure that when it's time for you to conduct a mission or conduct a layout or something like that, that you do it exactly the way that they want you to do it, even if it doesn't make sense. Okay, so after you do your packing list layout, you move to CIF, Central Issuing Facility. This is where you get all the other equipment that you're gonna need for Ranger School that you didn't bring with you from your home unit. So this is where you get an assault pack, this is where you get a rucksack, this is where you get your tent, your sleeping bag, all of those things like that. So, a couple tips I have for you when it comes to CIF. All right, tip number one. When you get your rucksack, when you get your LBV, when you get your vest, when you get anything, make sure that all of your zippers and your snaps are functional and that they work. Those are the things that the RIs check to make sure that your equipment is serviceable, especially in Darby. And it's also just good to have serviceable equipment, especially on your rucksack. When it comes to your iPro, they're gonna issue you iPro at CIF. The thing is that you don't want to wear this iPro because they expect it back. Either when you fail out of Ranger School, or when, if you're watching this video, hopefully you pass Ranger School. And if you don't give it back to them exactly the way that they gave it to you, which is absolutely impossible if you wear it, because it'll be smudged and scratched and all that stuff, then you have to pay like $40 for it. So take your iPro, stuff it at the bottom of your bag where you'll never see it again until you come back to CIF. Okay, when it comes to your 2-quart canteens, make sure that these things do not have holes in them or they will just leak all of the time. And let me tell you this, most of them have holes in them. So fill them up with water before you sign for your equipment, make sure there's no holes in them. Other thing that you wanna check is your tent. So making sure that you have all your tent poles, all of your tent stakes. When you're in Darby, you actually live in tents during techniques. So you wanna make sure that your tent isn't blowing all over the place like mine was. So it actually is night into day land navigation. So you start at like 2 or 3 in the morning and then you go until like 7 or 8 in the morning. You don't have to find like a certain number of points at night and a certain amount of points during the day. You just have to find all of your points within the given time. My recommendation is find the closest point first, because I think it's important to get your confidence up, and the only way to do that is by finding points. And so if you can just move to your closest point first, find it, I feel like that I'm more confident in my abilities and that I'm gonna do better finding the next points. Some people will say not to worry about your closest point and to use the time at night to make your longest movement, so that you're not looking for points in the dark, and that by the time you get to your furthest point, it's already light and you can find it. That's a technique, that's a strategy. That wasn't the strategy that I used. I passed on the first time, but there are plenty of people who pass on the first time using the technique I just explained. Okay, so after land navigation, if you pass, hopefully you pass, so you go back to the CTA, you get changed, they move you to the combatives pit. And there, at the combatives pit, is a solid 6 to 8 hour knife fighting lesson and combatives / buddy wrestling. Basically, they teach you a couple of combatives moves, a couple of knife fighting moves. You inevitably don't do them correctly. Everyone gets smoked, you roll around in the mud. It probably starts raining, I don't remember. And you just get smoked all night long. It's a great time. Only advice I can give you on this is just have an open mind. There is nothing that you're going to do to avoid the smoking. It's gonna come. So depending on whether you passed land nav or not, day 4 can either be really sucky or a really chill day. So if you didn't pass land nav, you have to retake it again the morning of day 4. If you did pass land nav, then you actually get to sleep in a little bit and wait for all the failures to complete land nav. After they come back, you guys go into CWST. CWST is the combat water survival training. Basically, there's like 3 or 4 different water confidence events, and it's actually kind of fun. You get to zip line, you get to walk across a high beam. It's really not that difficult if you're decent in swimming. Scratch that. You don't even have to be able to swim. You just have to be really good at not drowning. For most people, it's pretty easy. The next event is the 2-mile buddy run into the Malvesti obstacle course, also known as the Worm Pit. Let me tell you something. It's called the Worm Pit for a very specific reason. This place is pretty nasty. Basically what it is a typical obstacle course, monkey bars, walls you have to jump over, ropes you have to climb, things of that nature. But the thing is that the RIs flood it with water before you get there. So when you show up, it's literally ankle to knee deep water, and you have to negotiate all the obstacles. Oh yeah, by the way, you get smoked before every single obstacle. So it's not really a pass-fail event. It's more of just a survival event. Everyone pretty much gets through it. However, it's pretty sucky. Your uniform gets absolutely destroyed. They tell you don't try to wash them in the washing machines because they're done. Like, just throw them away. So just take a pair of ACUs with you, a pair of OCPs that you'd never want to see again, and make those your Malvesti uniforms. You've made it. It's your last day. This is where you do your 12-mile ruck march. And this is your greatest test. They say it's about 55 pounds. Basically, you are on a 6-mile out and back, and you have to complete the ruck march within 3 hours. Some people have lots of different strategies when it comes to ruck marching. I've always been the type of person to set my watch to go off every 3 minutes, and I will run for 3 minutes, walk for 3 minutes, run for 3 minutes, walk for 3 minutes, and I will do that the entire 12 miles. I think I finished my 12-mile ruck march in 2 hours and 30 minutes. I'm sure I could have gone faster, but I didn't feel like I needed to. Couple tips for this though. You get a popsicle stick at the turnaround point, or some type of item that you have to turn in at the finish. Put that in a secure pouch so that you don't lose it. Also, at the end of the ruck march, you do an equipment layout. So make sure you check your packing list over and over and over again. Make sure that you have everything. I would also give you this tip. You definitely need to tie down your BFA on your rifle, and you also need to tape your magazine pouches, because there were countless people who failed the ruck march because a magazine fell out of their pouch, and at the layout they didn't have all the magazines that they were supposed to. You don't want to get dropped for a silly mistake like that, so really do your due diligence in packing your rucksack and making sure that everything is secure on your kit. So our ruck march started at about 2 a.m. So there wasn't a lot of sleep. Actually, I think I stayed up all night just packing my rucksack anyway. So it was a really, really long day. After the ruck march and after the equipment layout, you get split up into 2 groups. Airborne qualified people and non-airborne qualified people. I was in the non-airborne qualified group, as you can tell. No airborne wings up here. But basically, the people who are airborne qualified, they jump into Derby, the Derby phase, the next phase that's coming up. And the non-airborne people get to do details at Derby. So while all the airborne qualified people are doing their airborne refresher training or whatever they do, I was unloading MRE boxes at Camp Derby, waiting for all of them to show up. So in closing, RAC Week is a very difficult 5 days. Some people even call it the hardest 5 days in the Army. It certainly is difficult, but there are more difficult parts of Ranger School, and those are coming up soon. So if you're going to Ranger School, there's nothing in Derby that you have not done before. All of these things that you were tested on are things that you have mastered at your home station. And if you haven't mastered them, then your unit is probably not going to be sending you. There's nothing to worry about. You get 3 meals a day, you sleep in a bed. Although you don't get to sleep very long, you still get to sleep in a bed, you get to take showers. It's all a mental game. You're gonna have to work hard, but just know it's not that difficult. Okay guys, thanks for watching this video. We will see you in the next video where we talk about Derby phase.